They say it's not a matter of if, but when. And we've all came off our bikes, especially those of us that ride trails, but an injury, that's supposed to be inevitable in cycling. And I was able to avoid any real injury for almost 15 years, but you may have noticed that recently I haven't uploaded any footage on a trail. And in a recent video, I mentioned that I had lightly injured my shoulder and I was working to get it back to normal. Well, sadly, it's getting worse. And I'm not alone. Locally, there are lots of injuries on the trail recently, and this got me curious. So I wanted you to share if you had been injured on your bike, and man, did you. 277 of you responded, and while they're all worthy, I can't get to them all due to time constraints, but I picked out a few that stood out to me. Some of these are brutal, and I'm going to share them, and I guess give a little bit of a shout out at the same time, but let me say, this seemed like a good idea when I posed the question, but after reading all these answers, they kind of make me a little bit paranoid. Apparently, there are a lot of ways a mountain bike and a mountain bike trail can do damage to the human body. I didn't put any street bike stories in here, but even on the streets, it doesn't really get any better. And then I guess discuss if all this is worth it for the average Joe. Let's get right into it and start with one of the more common injuries, which is a broken arm, like Luke Hoffman. And not to be outdone, there's Mitchie McCow, who broke his arm and his collarbone. And Carter Lindblom doubled down and broke an arm twice and his collarbone and added scars for good measure. We've already seen a couple of collarbones, and there were quite a few mentions of a broken collarbone, a very common trail injury. And for some of you, breaking your collarbone isn't enough. You have to break it in multiple places just to be fancy. And then there's the injuries that I can somewhat relate to, and that's the shoulder. Some very recent. And I also picked up on most of these injuries are a bad gift that keeps on giving. Like Crazy Mountain Biker, who has to ride with his bars at an angle now. Not good. And then there's Yan. He has a metal cable in one of his shoulders, and one of his arms is now longer than the other. I also noticed that a lot of people that mentioned injuries, along with mentioning a jump, they tended to break multiple bones at the same time, some ending up in a back brace for months on end. But you don't have to be doing jumps to get injured. I mean, it's so easy to make a small mistake on a trail, even on a green trail, like Michael McLaughlin on a warm-up loop. Even seemingly small injuries, like broken fingers, I mean, you can tape those together, but even those can have an impact on your daily life. Such is the case with Savage Moto. He had to type this message with one hand. Kenny G also messed up a finger, but now he has trouble gripping, and he also has a lot of scars. And then ends with worth it. Now, I've seen this a lot, and I've heard it a lot locally. But is it really worth it if the injury has lifelong effects, or even affects your life outside of biking? Take JMX 505, a simple knee sprain, and that was in July of last year. But hasn't been able to heal because for his job he has to stand. Now I don't want to come off as anti-mountain biking because even me, I can't wait to get back on the trail, but think about this. We ride the trails for fun, but that's a very small percentage of our time. Then we try to laugh it off. But should we let it make the large percentage of our life miserable or at least painful? Because some of these injuries, especially when they start stacking up, well, you can have effects from those for life, especially if you're older when you get the injury. And I guess that's part of the appeal of this channel, because I approach it as I ride, like an average Joe that tends to be more risk averse. But even with my cautious riding style, and after reading all these gruesome injuries, I still can't wait to get back out there. But I still can't help but wonder if there's almost a sense of a badge of honor that goes with some of the scars or some of the injuries. I don't know if that's a healthy mindset, but even though I know all of this, I still want to be part of it, so I have to ask, are we in some sort of a cult? I mean, think about it. We're trail riding, which we know at some point is probably going to have an impact health-wise, and yet we keep doing it, and not only that, when the negative impacts arise, we tend to band together tighter. And knowing all of it, both the good and the bad, I'm happy to be all in. And for me, injury-wise, other than my shoulder, I've been pretty lucky. But Dino Ideas did ask what was my worst crash or injury. And to find that, I have to go way back to when I was about 8 years old. I was racing my bike down a large hill, being chased by another kid, and I kept looking back at them to see how far my lead was. And there were some friends up on their bikes at the top of the hill. They started shouting, "Look out," but I couldn't understand what they were saying. What they were pointing my attention to was the van parked at the bottom of the hill. They hit the van head on and hurled not over but off to the side and landed and skidded eyelid first on the street, and it ended up ripping a hole in my eyelid that I had to have stitched together. Now that was when I was 8 and I still cringe thinking about it today. Not fun. That was also probably the most damage I've ever done to a bike because the fork steerer broke in half inside the head tube. So overall really not bad because I have to go all the way back to when I was 8 to get that story. Since then it's pretty much my shoulder and just a few scrapes and bruises here and there. Nothing compared to what you guys have endured. So I have to just shake my head that I've let my arm get frozen in place, because for now I'm limited to riding on the streets with narrower bars. If I get much wider than the bars on my Priority Gotham, I start to have issues. Hopefully I can make some headway this week and get back on bikes I really want to ride, like my Priority 600 and all my mountain bikes, because nothing makes you want to ride a trail like not being able to. Now I've saved the best for last, and I'm going to hand out a virtual worst of or best of, depending upon how you look at it, award, and that's Caedmon Jones. He lacerated his liver with the end of his handlebar, and that's brutal. He's lucky to be alive, and I'm glad that you are, Caedmon, and I really appreciate you sharing this with us. And what else can you say after something like that other than mountain biking can be potentially dangerous? Comment below and share your thoughts. Is it dangerous or not? Let's end this on as uplifting of a note as an injury can be with Heavenbound 20. He broke his arm on an exercise bike. Not just any exercise bike, this was one inside a Walmart store. It says don't spin the pedal and then try to stop it because it ends with a snapped arm and no dignity left. I mean, that's horrible, and I'm not laughing. Yeah, I'm laughing. It's horrible, but it's funny. You gotta admit, that's funny stuff. Thanks Heavenbound 20 and everybody else that shared their stories. If you didn't see yours here, or if you haven't seen them at all, be sure to hit up the comments tab, link in the description, and take a look at them because they're pretty good and bad. Thanks to everyone for watching, and be sure to have a great day and a safe ride. Ooh.